Let's look at a specific event in the history of Enron, which was one that became most famous and was one of the ones that maybe finally pushed Enron into the public consciousness. And this was the Californian electricity market. Now, the story of the Californian electricity market is an interesting one. The Californian electricity market was an old, boring market in which state-regulated companies, and in a lot of the major cities, actually state-owned utilities, provided the electricity supply for California. It was reliable, it was unexciting. Enron felt it was necessary to make this much more exciting, much more shareholder-oriented, and so decided to get involved in the California electricity market. And so it arranged with shareholders to take over a number of companies that supply electricity in the California area. But it decides there isn't enough profit in simply supplying electricity. And as Enron saw itself as a disruptor, a new marketeer in the thing, the one that believed in the financialization of products, it decided that selling short and selling long were the two ways to go with the electricity market. So it would sell short into surrounding markets, and it would try and get people to believe that there was a greater demand for electricity in the future because there wasn't going to be enough. And it would actually sell electricity that it was supposed to be supplying to California into surrounding states. And this would allow the electricity to appear to be in short supply in California. And in order to help it do that, it then shifted over to absolute fraud by actually getting companies, getting electricity producers, getting the actual power stations to shut down on spurious grounds of danger or repair or maintenance, etc., and bring the support supply. Electricity price in California go through the roof. The people of California are really starting to think. So it leads to an actual electricity crisis. This is a situation where financialization, a straightforward idea of selling derivatives, long and short, into the market based on electricity and basis of that actually exists, starts to actually affect the real world markets. And with the artificial shortage of supply because electricity was being moved out of California, actually companies started to invest in building and buying brand new power stations. Literally, power stations were ordered. I was an engineer at the time in Siemens Power Generation, and we were building power stations to order to supply California for a market that didn't really exist because Enron were hiding the thing. The leading light of this was a company called Calpine, Californian Power and Light, and it actually supplied most of the electricity to the non-state-owned, the non-city-owned assets in the area. And actually, they were expanding massively. At one point, all the gas turbines for building electricity for several years in advance had been bought up. If you wanted a gas turbine, you couldn't get one anywhere because they'd been bought up to supply Calpine. There was like 40 turbines on order at one point from Calpine, all of which disappeared overnight when the California market collapsed. Now, what did Enron say the problem was? Now, Enron argued that the problem was Californian regulations, that California was a highly regulated market, and this made competing in the markets very difficult. Therefore, it was very important to deregulate it. For this, they were politically highly supported by the Bush administration, which actually went on record as California was suffering from power cuts to say that the problem was the green issues. So you may recognize some of these things that come up even today. They say the problem was the green regulations, the problem was the governance regulations, that California need to have a bonfire of regulations that allow it to open up its markets and help Enron to compete. And they offered an open market solution. They basically said, if the business of business is business, so what you need to do is you need to get rid of all these regulations and just allow us to provide power on our own rights. And to a certain extent, they won. The Federal Reserve, who were in control, the federal government, who were in control of distributing assets, won the argument, lost the argument, and they were able to actually make them start to privatize and make California start to privatize its assets, making it down. And this was all going on. But this didn't happen in a vacuum. California itself responded. At one point, the governor, a guy called Ray Davis, who was very much seen as a quiet man, a kind of a grey man, grey in name, grey in nature, who was doing that. He threatened to declare a state of emergency, and at one point, the threats to use the state police, the National Guard, to actually go seize power plants and make sure they came online and going about this. So there's a point actually when the The information was pushing back, but actually, in the end, they failed. They blinked first, and the Federals things to push forward, and then because of the huge problems actually in California, they integrated a recall petition which saw Gray Davis removed as governor, and actually a very famous figure, the governator came in, a guy called Arnold Schwarzenegger became governor of California with a remit to basically roll back the state and to improve things for Enron, etc. going forward. And one of the jokes at the moment of Enron was making a lot of money was, what was the difference between California and the Titanic? And Jeff Skilling, CFO, as we've noticed, of Enron said, when the Titanic went down, it still had the lights on. But it's worth noting that Enron were able to effectively change the governance. The elected governor of California was removed and was replaced with someone who was much more in line with Enron. But in the long run, Enron didn't benefit from this. That's the question, because actually Enron business model was very poor. But at this stage, at the time when the people were voted out, the governor of California that was anti-Enron and voted one in that was pro-Enron, Enron looked like it was top of the world. Enron looked like it was in charge. But as we'll see elsewhere in further videos, this didn't last. So what exactly did go wrong?